The second race of the season is the true start to a championship campaign. It is the chance to build momentum and gain confidence for a whole entire season, or be behind the 8-ball early off in the campaign. Tonight, the Precision Racing League Cup Series will be tested with their first 1.5-mile race of the season. Who will carry the momentum from Napa Valley to the Windy City? We're about to find out here on the Global SimRacing Channel. We welcome you to the virtual Chicagoland Speedway in Gillette, Illinois, for round 2 of the Precision Racing League Cup Series season, sponsored by Ford Entertainment Group PC. I'm Justin Prince. Alongside of the booth tonight for this exciting race is NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series driver Christian Scheller. Behind the scenes is our director Sean Ambrose, and the using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. What's the best way around Chicagoland Speedway? Why don't we take a look at your GSRC lap guide to find out.
Welcome to Chicagoland Speedway in Joliet, Illinois. Born out of the track boom of the 90s and early 2000s. Beginning racing in July 2001, not much has changed around Chicagoland, with the exception of lights being added in 2008. She still has the original surface around this 1.5-mile oval, making the track surface harsh from those Midwest winters. That means you really have to manage the tire wear over the course of a race. Chicagoland stands out from the other tracks created around its time period. Yes, it is 1.5 miles and D-shaped, but the shape of the track means it's never truly straight. When you come off the 18-degree bank turns 1 and 2 and onto the backstretch, the first thing you're going to notice is that it's curved. And when you roll into turn 3 and come off turn 4, it feels like you almost immediately dive into the tri-oval. It's an interesting drive for sure. And that interesting drive has produced some incredible races over the years, especially in IndyCar. The old Dallara IndyCar 0305 that you can find on iRacing was a particularly racy machine here, with 3 of the top 5 closest IndyCar finishes, including the closest, coming right here at Chicagoland. NASCAR has been here from the start though, with all 3 National Series making at least 1 trip a year here, and the Grand National cars making 2. ARCA has also been here from the beginning. A series that you may not associate with Chicagoland, USAC Silver Crown. Yes, the ones you can find here on iRacing made stops here in the mid-2000s. So with that, let's get ready to turn loose in the Windy City.
That's a look at your GSRC lap guide around Chicagoland Speedway. Now let's bring my broadcast partner Christian Scheller for tonight's action. And it's a 1.5-mile circuit that has very unique characteristics, including that fully curved back straightaway.
Yeah, this is a 1.5 miles that's a lot of people's favorites, as you say. That curved back straightaway makes it a little bit interesting, and the D-shaped oval layout actually makes the front stretch very interesting as well. We see a lot of drivers dropping all the way down to the apron to get some big runs down into turn 1. Very, very rough through 1 and 2 as well, and with only 18 degrees of banking, it's quite a challenging racetrack.
Indeed, and many drivers have been slipping and sliding, including you see one in Colton Lane off to the grass right now in this practice session. But tonight's race is sponsored by FEGPC, offering sim racing PCs for every budget, whether you're just getting started or you're ready for that monster machine or anything in between. We've got your budget covered. Over 3,000 iRacers are currently running FEG PCs, including some iRacing staff. Get yours today using the contact page over at fegpc.net. Many sponsors help bring this series to fruition, starting with Diecast Kings, your home for the best selection of NHRA and NASCAR diecast cars at diecastkings.com. Once again, that's diecastkings.com. You can also find them on Facebook at facebook.com/diecastking. This series is also sponsored by Road Trip Transport. Whether a tractor or a truck or anything in between, we can move it. Specializing in all kinds of flatbed freight, call Road Trip Transport at 251-525-7429. You can also find them on Facebook at facebook.com/road-trip-transport or -inc. And finally, ButtKicker. ButtKicker products include incredible immersion and realism for every game. You can feel every nuance and truly put yourself in the driver's seat. To feel what you've been missing, go to thebuttkicker.com. Let's take a look at what you may have missed from the first race of the championship campaign at Sonoma. It was an entertaining race where Richard Regan Jr. came away with the victory and 42 points to start off the campaign. His teammate Joshua Daniels finished second overall in points gained in the round, with Bradley Hawley, Abner Acosta, and Robert Bisson Jr. rounding out the top 5 of the points early on in the campaign. The team standings is also going to be very interesting this year. Lots of new teams and lots of different players. AthleteBooker.com eSports leads the team standings entering tonight after the first race with 94 total points, 2 of their drivers, mind you, finishing inside the top 5. SGE Esports, rather, is 15 points back. Joey Rolls Racing, Power Performance Group, and Car Ramron round out the top 5 in the team standings. With that, let's take a look at the race details, Christian, as these drivers get ready to tackle Chicagoland.
It's round 2 of 10 tonight. Very, very different from what we had last week. Obviously, Sonoma road course, an extremely different challenge, and a very long race last week, actually. So 85 laps around Chicagoland, a little bit more in the comfort zone of a lot of drivers out here. We'll force at least one pit stop if it does go green. As always, we're on a fixed setup with no fast repair and a 24 incident limit that I don't think we're going to see anybody reach.
Going to be very difficult to reach that, to say the very least, tonight. There is also a 1-hour time limit. It may come into a factor, but many Chicagoland races have the tendency to go quick and green. Let's take a look at the track conditions, and this is part of the reason why it's been so slippery here in this practice session. With the quick times, it's been 112 degrees Fahrenheit on the track, 79 air temp, partly cloudy skies. It's June the 20th in sim, just around 2:33 p.m. So it's a hot one today, Christian.
Yeah, and that's really a big factor around this racetrack. As I said in the track preview, it's pretty rough out there, especially on the bottom line through 1 and 2. And it's one of those tracks where if you miss your line just a little bit, it'll really mess you up on exit. And that's obviously a good opportunity to pull a pass on someone. As we see actually right there, David Wilson Jr. just a little bit too high on the exit of 4 and just grabbed that wall. So that's another area we've got to watch out for, drivers being just slightly offline and having to check up on corner exit. Obviously, with it being somewhat pack racing, it can cause a big checkup throughout the field. And if you're somewhat in the back, it'll be something you've got to keep an eye on.
You may see all these cars stopping on the backstretch. That's because they're getting ready for what they call a pit party. They're electing to start on the back straightaway. Just one driver missed said pit party, and that's one of the Athlete Booker machines of Joshua Daniels. It gives the drivers a chance to feel how it is in a pack, and we talked about the slipperiness with this track and the abrasiveness of the surface and the difficulty of this track. In your opinion, if you were in that field tonight, how would you battle your way through the pack, especially with the difficulty to pass in some cases?
Well, I think that building a run through 1 and 2 is somewhat critical, but it's also quite difficult to pass at that end of the racetrack. I personally find that if you can tuck up right behind someone and then you get down to the 3 and 4 end, if you can kind of get them to overdrive the corner just a little bit so that you can maybe cut down on the exit, you can get a really good run down the front stretch, use that apron to run a smaller radius down to turn 1, and you can get alongside them there and sort of steal the preferred line away as you get to turn 1, and that's really my preferred way to pass at this racetrack.
Drivers now working in one final practice group in the final 2 minutes of the session. Regan Jr., Felton, Scotty Johnson, Bradley Hawley, and Wilson Jr. top 5 on the board. Fastest times in the 30 flats, all the way to mid-pack in the 30.3s in the draft today. But with what you've seen at Sonoma, what are some of the thoughts you have coming into the second race, going from road course racing to the 1.5 mile package?
Well, one driver I was really surprised with to see shine as much as he did at the road course was Richard Regan Jr. Obviously, he did a great job tire managing, and it's something that we've seen he's made really great progress with through the past couple of seasons. There was a couple of races in earlier seasons where maybe he struggled a little bit with the tire management, but he's obviously made really good gains. And Sonoma is a track that really shows who the best tire savers are, just because of how slippery it is, how hot it is, and how important it is to keep the rear tires on the car at that track. So I really don't think that we should expect to see a shake-up in the form going to the 1.5 miles, because the drivers that we've seen be at the front of the pack in past seasons were there at the front of the pack at Sonoma as well.
Absolutely, some of those drivers just outside that top 5. We talked about O'Brien, who is constantly in the top 6 or so. Acosta's still in the top 10 in speed. And Doyle Rance for much of the session was inside the top 10 as well. The multi-year iRacing veteran. About 20 seconds until qualifying, what else do you feel these drivers should know in terms of what they need to keep in mind throughout this race tonight?
I think one other factor that they've got to keep an eye on is obviously the aero effects of following another car and how that's going to affect you, especially if you're not the leader and if you're trying to stay with the leader and be there for when the strategy element comes in. I think that we can probably expect that this race stays green to actually get a green flag pit stop. It's a track that tends to shake people out pretty quickly. That you don't see people stuck together so much as you do at other tracks, and there's not so many choke points around here. It's not like the quad oval at Charlotte where you see the dog legs all really kind of bunch people together and cause some incidents. It's quite a good track for just solid green flag racing.
Absolutely agree with you, as the first driver out for qualifying is Jeffrey Ford in the 95. He is driving the FEGPC machine, and that Chevrolet Camaro will begin qualifying. His fastest time in practice was in the 34s. Now, in your opinion, at Chicagoland, with this type of package, how important is it to qualify up at the front with this track?
I think with any mile and a half these days, it's extremely important to at least be within the top 10. If you're kind of outside of that point, it's just so hard to make your way forwards, because what you tend to see is everybody else is trying to obviously make passes as well, and if they end up double file in front of you for any kind of extended period of time, it will slow that pair down, and obviously you behind, it's difficult for you to make anything work when cars are double file ahead of you. So it slows you down as well. It brings the guys behind back into play, and it's really very, very difficult for drivers in the, say, between the 10th and the 20th positions to really make anything happen, because at the tail end of the line, you have the options of doing some really aggressive tire saving and be very, very strong at the end of a run. In the middle of the pack, you just don't have that luxury. So being inside the top 10 in qualifying is definitely the place where I'd want to be.
Several drivers you just seen did scrape the wall in qualifying. That's why Jeffrey Ford's time didn't count the first time across the stripe. Lane also scraped the wall coming to his first lap. So far, just 6 drivers have set time. Scotty Johnson, 30.6. That puts him in P5. The fastest drivers are running the 30.2s. And it's the road course ace, Level Motorsports' Abner Acosta.
Yeah, it's a really good time by Abner. It's a driver I'm keeping an eye on. Obviously, we know him in terms of road course racing. Don't know too much about him in terms of ovals, so this is a chance to see what he can do on a mile and a half.
See if we'll bump up the time. On average, the second laps have been 1/10 of a second quicker. That time only about 3/100ths. 30.251 currently the top time. Robert Bisson Jr. currently in second. Colton Lane now coming across the stripe. 6th the first time, up to 3rd now on the board.
See, a lot of drivers are waiting still to go out. Richie Regan Jr. with that sitting in time, and 2 minutes and 20 left on the clock.
And part of that might come down to how many clouds are above the racetrack. It's partly cloudy, yes, but there were several times over the course of a couple hours of practice where large patches of clouds covered the track for 10 minutes at a time.
Yeah, and obviously that drops the track temperature pretty significantly, so if you can catch one of those, it really is a case of free lap time, and we do see drivers trying to get that, especially at the end of a session, and that's why we can never really be sure as to who has pole until the clock really does run down to 0.
Jay Fountain first time doesn't count. One of the drivers who didn't get the chance to race the road course, that was Matthew Wilford taking the start of his first lap. While Bradley Hawley, he flexed his road course muscles starting his first lap. But one of the local drivers in terms of region is Illinois driver Adam Zemke, looking to win at one of his home tracks up to 12th in this qualifying session.
Yeah, and Adam Zemke is a driver that we see featuring a lot throughout the past seasons, and actually a driver who has some really good flashes of speed at times and really looks like a top 5 or even better contender at times. Just it seems sometimes he can get mired in the mid-pack, and he's going to be starting back there actually in the mid-pack, so it'll be interesting to see if he can move his way forwards.
James O'Brien now starting the first lap. O'Brien had talked about wanting to try and improve after mistakes in the first race. His teammate, Richard Regan Jr., is now on top of the board with a 30.186. Woodford currently 24th, up to 18th. We'll see how the last of the drivers do across the stripe, as these drivers have about only 40 seconds to set a time.
And it's really kind of putting pressure on yourself to time it that tight. Obviously, you see James O'Brien crossing the line there, just over 30 seconds to go.
Good enough for 5th at the moment. And O'Brien showed a lot of speed on the ovals last season and in past seasons. Bradley Hawley now in provisional P2. Can O'Brien bump his way up from row 3? Off the final corner, may have scraped the wall with the right rear. We'll see if this lap counts. This time by, yes indeed, second lap invalidated with that tiny scrape at the end of the qualifying session. 25 total drivers took times, 28 competitors have brought their cars to Chicagoland. Let's take a look at how they will start tonight. Richard Regan Jr. starts on the pole with a 30.186, with Bradley Hawley starting alongside in row number 1. Abner Acosta starts in 3rd with Joshua Daniels in 4th. James O'Brien starts in 5th. The AthleteBooker.com eSports machines have 3 of the top 5 starting positions. Robert Bisson Jr. starts in 6th in the SGE eSports machine, with Colton Lane starting alongside Pat Harvey. Danny Cervantes starts in 9th, and Adam Zemke, the Illinois driver, rounds out the top 10.
Last driver in the 30.3 second bracket was Doyle Lawrence in 11th, and then we actually had a tie for 12th between Colin Carroll and Brett Adams. The nod went to Colin Carroll. He'll line up in 12th. Brett Adams will be 13th. Brandon Adams, just 2 thousandths of a second behind, will be in 14th. Then on the next row back, we got Mike Knight and Jay Felton, actually starting pretty far back in 16th tonight. And Adam Shane is 17th, Blaine Adams 18th, Matthew Wilford in 19th, and Jose Medina in 20th.
Yves Pellin, 21st tonight, running in the Goldfish machine. 22nd position is Paul D. Johnson in the Ranger Transport Ford Mustang. The last of the SGE eSports drivers in the top 23 is Scotty Johnson with Charles Sumner in 24. Last time put in was Jeffrey Ford with a 30.9. Remember, he smacked the wall hard at the beginning of his first qualifying lap. Wilson Jr., Kalen, and Brown round out the 28 entrants of note. Brown currently not on racetrack, may potentially miss the start tonight. But once again, to reset, 85 laps tonight, 127.5 miles. Track temp currently 110 degrees with a cloud above the sky, with 79 degrees the air temp, when not a factor at 2 miles an hour to the north this evening. Chicagoland Speedway is a facility that opened in 2001 with 18 degrees of banking in the turns, 11 on the front, 5 down the backstretch. And with this race getting ready to get underway in just a few moments here, Christian, what's your keys to victory if you want to win at this track?
I think it really comes down to being in the preferred line like we see on Mile and Haas pretty much all the time, and being in that group of top 5 at the front, not pushing the tires too hard in the first 10 laps of the race, but also managing track position. You really don't want to fall back too far. It'll be very, very difficult to move forwards. And I really think there's a strong chance that this race goes green, so some of those drivers who are better at tire management, they're definitely going to move their way to the fore, and it's going to come down to when you choose to make that pit stop, and then where you come out and who you come out against and what you do those first 10 laps on that second run.
One thing to note as well, drivers have just been reminded 3 sets of tires available. That's important, Christian, because the most recent iRacing build allowed the ability for separate leagues and hosted sessions to have tire sets per race. That means you can't just come down every single caution flag. It becomes caution every few laps or so. Yeah, and that's definitely going to play into strategies towards the end of the race. If we do start to see yellows, obviously, if it goes green, we'll only see 1 set of tires, and that'll be a non-factor. But if we start seeing multiple yellows, then we're going to see drivers really going up and down the field with those tire strategies. iRacing pace car is off. Richard Regan Jr. in control of the field. Green flag is out. We're underway from Chicagoland.
You see immediately drivers ducking down to the apron just to get a little bit of a shorter run down to turn 1.
Good launch and turn for first and second place. Already Hawley down to the bottom side. First side-by-side, Daniels and Acosta for third on back.
I see Daniels is elected to take the top side around Acosta. It's difficult to hold on that top lane, and we see he's actually pushing up a little bit. The 9 car behind him is getting a big run on him.
Yeah, that's a teammate that's now to the inside of O'Brien, but the first lap goes to Regan Jr. Holly trying to make a move, though, on the high side. Trying to arc it down and give the squeeze in his Ford Mustang side-by-side for the race lead. Better run down the backstretch for Holly.
And you have to be very, very aggressive with that kind of pinching from the top side to make that work. It's all about stopping the car on the low line, having the momentum on corner exit.
Trying to give it a bit of a side draft off the corner. Regan Jr., though, able to take that duck down to the apron. That's what we talked about a little bit, and that makes it where you're able to defend on the bottom side a little easier.
It's definitely a bit of a unique oddity to this racetrack. We see it at other places a little bit, say Las Vegas, but it seems to really be at its most extreme around here.
Still side by side. Regan Jr. still on the bottom. Holly still trying to make the top work. Finally bobbles up the track. And for the first time since turn 2 in the first lap, Regan Jr. cleared. No, Holly with an air run to the outside.
And Holly's really trying to push to get this lead, but that's definitely going to be hurting his tires. We've got a huge amount of 3-wide action going on in the mid-pack right now. A great save by the 23 going down into turn 1. He was really out of shape.
That was Brad Adams and the Adams Family Racing Machine. You look at some of those drivers in the mid-pack right now. That side-by-side is for 10th spot. Zemke on the outside, inside Cervantes, as they are currently already falling nearly 2 seconds off the lead.
This is really what I was saying about the side-by-side. Obviously, we've seen it for the lead, and it's not slowing them down too much, but in the mid-pack, if there's a lot of double file, it really checks everybody up, and they lose a lot of track position.
Back up towards the front, Regan Jr. able to get clear this time by Holly. Now goes to the bottom side for one of the first times this race. And one of the tricky parts to it, that bottom line, we talked about that roughness is, especially down to the white line in turn 3, if you get low enough, there's a chance you clip a little bit of a bump that goes up about 6 inches to a foot off that bottom line that can push you tight the rest of the corner.
Yeah, and you have to be really, really careful running that bottom line in 3 and 4 because, as you say, it's so rough and there are so many bumps down there. And if it does push you offline very early in the corner, then you just track up the racetrack right up to the wall. And obviously you lose a lot of exit speed because you have to back out of the throttle. And it's one of the dangers, really, of that turn.
Still back and forth for that front. Here's on board from Acosta. One of the drivers already able to get single file as they watch the lead scrap itself out. Keep in mind, despite the fighting, Regan Jr. and Holly have been 2 of the fastest cars on the track the past couple laps.
It's going to be interesting to see if this is actually going to work out in their favor or if this high pace that they're running relative to the other drivers in the top 5 is going to come back to bite them. Oh, we've got an incident on the front stretch.
One driver spinning around, caution flag is out, several drivers off on the grass. Cervantes in it, big one as well for Kalen, and several others all smashed up. It looked like Danny Cervantes may have been the trigger in the 25 machine as coming off turn 4 was on the bottom side and nearly smacked a car. Did get some help on entry to turn 3, mind you, too.
Yeah, it looked a little strange. I'm not sure whether he was having to check up in the entry part of the corner there, but obviously, oh, there we go. That's what it was. Obviously, way out of shape on corner entry, and then everybody stacking up behind him, and on exit, just kind of drifted up the track and got really pinballed around, and that started off a huge chain reaction in the mid-pack.
That was Jay Felton who gave the shot in the back bumper, but as you said, just as everyone tried to get around, they demolished several cars. The 62 of Kalen will forward in his first race, as well as that red machine you see in Wilson Jr., as they all had nowhere to go in a track blocker.
Yeah, you see, I'm not sure who it was who got tagged that came back up the track right at the center of the tri-oval there, but obviously that meant the cars on the top side had really nowhere to go. They were already checking up, and unfortunately just cleaned out 3 or 4 cars right there.
Adams, Pellin were in that as well. Several drivers in the mid-pack already involved in the first caution flag. And here's again the dynamicness of the tire situation. Most drivers electing to stay out, except for one who were not involved in the wreck. Joshua Daniels sacrificing track position for 10-lap fresher tires.
And it's going to make him absolutely mega on this restart. He's going to have so much pace. The question is he going to be able to get back all the way to the front and actually get into the lead and gap the field? I mean, no tires.
He just topped off. Yeah, topped off on the fuel. This is actually a conversational point because the fuel is around maybe 64 laps on estimate. This gives him an extra bit of fuel if this race goes green after this.
A very surprising decision not to take tires. I was really with him on coming down to pit because he would have obviously had a big pace advantage. Whether he can get to the end from here, I really don't think he can. I think that's way too far.
I think it's more so a gamble of if they go green in the long run and then they get a caution once there's the different cycles. I think that's the main thing, is to be able to stay out until maybe lap 70. That's about the only thing to think of in that.
That's a huge gamble for him though right now. Obviously we saw the incident happen in the mid-pack and he's going to be behind all those drivers, and it's a big risk.
And mind you, the tire strategy, the reason you mentioned so much is in the NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series All-Star Race, when you tried that at North Wilkesboro, you nearly had the chance to lap the field.
Yeah, and that was obviously quite a much more extreme scenario, but there was the very real possibility that Joshua Daniels would have marched his way to the front very, very quickly, taking a set of tires there, and obviously taken the lead and been able to build himself a pretty significant gap, I think, before a green flag pit stop would have come out, and it would have given him more strategy options in terms of when he did make that green flag stop.
By the way, live timing in scoring is available for this event tonight. Be sure to go to GSRC.tv to keep track of where your favorite teams, drivers, and more are throughout tonight's race. With 74 laps to go, it is Regan Jr. in the lead, Holly, Acosta, O'Brien, Lane, Harvey, Bisson Jr., Carroll, Lawrence, and Felton rounding out the top 10. Biggest movers so far, by the way, Charles Sumner, 13th. He's up plus 11 along with Jeffrey Ford. Remember, those are two drivers who had lots of bad luck in qualifying.
And Jeffrey Ford obviously started all the way back in 25th and made up a solid 11 spots since the beginning of the race. So that's he's really paid the issues of qualifying and got himself in a good spot already.
Looking on board right now with that machine as the lights are out on top of the iRacing official pace car. Start on the outside line, that machine. Keep in mind, Felton, who was a part of that last caution, no damage, is up to 10th position. So at this point, with what we've seen early on, how do you play this if you're some of these other drivers? Because the funny thing is, with how hard Holly was fighting, he talked about trying to save enough tire to make it to the end of the race with me earlier today.
Yeah, and it was kind of surprising to me to see him pushing so hard on the top side that early in the run. That really, really hurts the tires to do that. It significantly increases the wear rate to be battling another car, and especially being outside of the preferred groove. We see that rubber down on the track, it really helps with tire wear. So obviously running the top line where people generally aren't running, it really does add a significant amount of wear to the tire. And obviously if he was trying to make it to the end of the race, then that was it seemed a conflicting sort of approach.
We'll see how this goes now, though, with 73 laps to go. 2 Ford Mustangs in the front row, then 2 Chevrolet Camaros, then a Chevy, then a Toyota. Back to racing from Chicagoland.
He went very, very early there and kind of caught Holly out by surprise, but he was still able to duck down in a second. It's really spread the field out, though.
Remember, leader in control of the field. On all restarts, the initial start goes off Barney the flagman. First side-by-side, Acosta on the bottom. That's O'Brien now trying to build up a run.
See O'Brien having a good run tonight. She started in 5th and running in 3rd. Way to 4th now, but still having a pretty solid points day at this point of the race.
Colton Lane now making his way up through the field as well in the Rescue Graphics machine, one of the Winnebago racing cars as well. Got a bit tight, though. Here comes a big run to this inside. Pat Harvey making it near 3 wide down the back.
Thinks better of it before they got the 3, but right there, you see Colton Lane drove very, very deep into 1. He's driven very deep into 3 this time, but he's been able to make it stick.
By the way, you may have noticed a car really low in the bottom of the racetrack. That was Joshua Daniels letting everybody go and dropping voluntarily back to 23rd position. So something going on with the 77 with that decision to top off and now really back it down.
Yeah, I'm very confused as to what Joshua Daniels' plan is right now, but I guess we're going to find out what it is when we get late on in the race.
O'Brien now getting picked off on the top from the bottom once again, and these are teammates right behind him. Besant Jr. trying to give the draft now to his fellow SGE eSports machine and Pat Harvey. And Harvey able to take away the spot. That is for P5.
Just looking a little deeper in the pack, it's becoming painfully obvious that drivers are finding it difficult to pass on the bottom of turn 1. Seen a lot of drivers driving very deep in, and then as we saw at the front, they're getting tight and it's really checking up everybody behind them, and if they're still pinned to the bottom through 3 and 4, they are catching that bump, and it's creating some interesting moments, especially for drivers who are on the outside of these cars and then washing up the racetrack.
So what do you do to adapt to that at this point if you're a driver?
I think through 1 and 2, the only thing that you can do to help yourself is to back up the entry more than you already are. And as a driver trying to make a pass, it's so difficult to do because obviously you're constantly wanting to gain physical positioning on the track, and the idea that you would back up the corner to somehow gain, that's it seems very counterintuitive, but sometimes you just have to do it. And through the 3 and 4, it's a very similar deal. You have to back the corner up to make sure that you can stay down on that white line.
Taking a look at the battle for second place on the screen. Holly holding on. Here comes Acosta to the bottom side. He's able to build up a run. And a lot of the passes so far tonight have been set up more so in 3 and 4, especially with that push tight, with that very different line you need to take with that exit in here in the tri-oval.
Yeah, and that push tight, obviously, on the exit of 3 and 4 can really check up a car, and that's what's giving him a big run down the straightaway. That was actually a relatively easy pass there for Acosta, so I'm wondering if Holly was somewhat content to let Acosta go ahead of him and go and try and run down the leader right at this point of the race.
This grouping currently separated by about 0.5 of a second. Lane in 4th spot. As you see the differences in intervals, the gap between first and second is now 0.35 seconds. And this is something we've seen from Regan Jr. with this package before. He is a dominant driver on the oval, Christian, where he has the ability to dominate races. It's been in some tracks the tire winner.
Yeah, he's a big fan of getting himself out in the lead, and it's kind of actually what we used to see in Formula 1 from Sebastian Vettel. He would put himself out in the lead and then really control the race from that point, and it seems like Richard Regan Jr. sort of subscribes to that same mentality, and obviously it's been very successful for him in this league. And I think it's doubled up with his newfound ability to really save tires, and it kind of compounds. Obviously there's the aero effects of following a car as well, and being the leader you don't have to worry about those, and I think it's got to be pretty demoralizing for guys in this league to see him get out in the lead at this point, because you know when you see that it's going to be very, very difficult to beat him.
And that clean air you mentioned helps save the tires as well. Part of it is the aerodynamics in some of these battles, because say you're in this grouping and you're behind a car, there was actually a good Reddit post that helped explain this on the NASCAR subreddit, where if in dirty air, you might slam the splitter on down to the racetrack. Holly tapped the wall. He's now slowing down a bit, so he's got damage. That's why there's so much of a stack up off the corner.
Yeah, and that's obviously another little factor that plays into it, where as soon as you see a driver starting to have a little bit of a struggle, it bunches everybody behind him up so much, and then everybody's realizing that there's an opportunity to gain track position, and obviously we see a lot of a double file immediately build up. And the thing is, that really helps the drivers who are ahead of that group, because obviously being double file slows down both cars and both lines, so it allows for these mini packs to kind of form around the racetrack.
And here's the thing with Holly, now stuck on that top line in the 184 with that damage. That's going to slow down that race car for the next good little bit. Bit of diciness just right behind Pat Harvey of note. One of the Adams family racing machines, Brett Adams, nearly took it 3 wide down the front stretch.
And this pack that we've got around Holly right now, it's kind of is double damage happening right now because we've got Colton Lane on the bottom line. He's actually being forced 3 wide as they get down towards turn 3. And we've seen Colton Lane just really struggles to get passes done through 1 and 2. Obviously washing up the racetrack a little bit, and it's just been stacking up everybody behind. We see Jay Felton's actually cleared him, now looking to the top of Bradley Holly.
And this group has already lost 3 seconds to Richard Regan Jr. with all the battling. Felton now trying to use the top side. Holly's gone and clear a couple times with that line off too. Able to do that. There is 3 wide behind them. Bisson Jr. now forced the middle lane up top. Brett Adams wants to gain track position now.
Yeah, and Brett Adams is a driver that I think we need to keep an eye on. I'm pretty certain he was one of the drivers who pit, so I think he's actually got a fresh set of tires on his car.
Yes, indeed. He did come down and pit, was involved in the caution flag. In fact, the only person who didn't stay longer than 15 seconds to the box outside of Daniels, who only topped off on the fuel.
And this was really what I was expecting to see with Joshua Daniels when he came down and pit. Obviously, he didn't take tires, but this is kind of what he could have done and get back to the front. Obviously, we see it's working very, very well for Brett Adams at this point. He's just moving through this group of cars.
Adams is now up to 5th position with that pass on Hawley. Next car up is Jay Felton, then clean space, but here's the problem again. I mentioned that bunch-up effect being double damage. That's gone now to 5 seconds for some of these drivers, lost in the span of 7 to 10 laps.
Yeah, and this is where it comes about a bit of a tactical decision as a driver, because obviously when you're behind cars that you know you're faster than, you want to pass them. It's just a natural thing. But sometimes you can actually lose more time by trying to pass a car and actually even getting the pass done than you would just pushing them along and letting the field kind of naturally spread out and then pulling off a pass later in the run. And it's really difficult to pace yourself into that kind of mentality of just, I'm going to wait a little bit, because everybody wants to pass, and sometimes if you don't pull the pass off, the car next behind you in line will have a run on you, and they'll be the one to force a 2-wide scenario. So it's sometimes not in your control, but it also requires a lot of self-control as to when to try and execute a pass.
Absolutely agree with you on that. By the way, Helen, the first official DNF, Brown, a DNS on the night. Lloyd Ford, also a DNF just moments ago. He was scored in 25th position. Kalen is still getting repairs. Now 14 minutes total on that. But speaking of damage, some of these cars in this grouping, mind you, they look like they've been battling up Bristol, not at Chicagoland, with how much front nose damage some of these cars have. We're talking guys like Cervantes, Adams has damage in various different parts of the car, etc.
Yeah, and obviously that first big incident we had on the front stretch really roughed up a lot of cars out there. It's surprising to me that we're not seeing some of these drivers struggle more with the aero effects. I'm not sure whether there's some tires that are perhaps offsetting it. Obviously, some of these guys came down to get repairs. But that 25's got pretty significant nose damage, and a 1.5 mile racetrack, we've seen that really affects your straight line speed.
Yeah, it's been surprising how good he's been able to stay up at the front. The only thought I can have is it was a 53-second pit stop when he came down for service with that caution flag. There's the chance he took the tires too, and that might be the saving grace. Here's the problem. How's that car going to perform on equal setting? We'll have to see.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and that's where perhaps we're going to see some of these drivers like Brett Adams and Danny Cervantes, when everybody does cycle out onto equal tires for the second run. So I do believe we're going to get a green flag pit stop here in this run. That's gonna see those drivers start to fall backwards throughout the pack. But the thing is it still going to be a net gain on what would have happened had they not taken tires? And I strongly think it will be, because where they would be running without tires is about 5 to 6 seconds further back on the track right now.
So where do you go in terms of the strategy? It's a one-stopper. We talked about it a little bit, Christian. With the fuel window open, With 53 laps to go, when do you pit if you're some of these drivers?
I think obviously the yellow took a couple of race laps out of the equation, made it more like an 80 lap race compared to an 85 lap race. So I think we should expect to see drivers come down around about 45, and really at the front of the field it's a question as to who blinks first. We've seen with this tire that a lot of times the long pitting option is quite favorable, because it means that even if you do come out behind the driver, you will have such a significant tire advantage. You can just kind of use them to draft up to them and just pull the pass and then really drive away from them. So I think the ball is firmly in Richard Regan Jr.'s court right now, and it'll just be on him to kind of keep people out on the racetrack up until the point where he feels it's time to pit. One driver I'm really impressed with, though, is Abner Acosta. I haven't seen him on ovals before. He's doing a great job in second right now. He's
Take a
sitting
look
just
on board.
0.6 behind Richard Regan Jr., and we've seen it so difficult to match the long run pace of Regan Jr. on these mile-and-a-halves. And James O'Brien and Jay Felton obviously in the battles is 5 seconds behind. James O'Brien had a pretty clean run, and he's 1.8 seconds off the lead.
And Acosta, mind you, from Orlando, Florida, originally from Puerto Rico, 10-year iRacing member. 9 career victories in official races on the oval sign in 273 starts, 66 victories in 754 road course starts, and, just by the way, mind you, took part to the 24 hours long in one of the top split races today. His team finishing pretty decent, 15th overall officially on the board.
Yeah, he's had a solid weekend, obviously looking to end it with a good result here, and it's actually starting to eat into Richard Regan Jr.'s advantage at this point. Last time by, Regan Jr. ran a 3:39, Acosta ran a 3 flat.
P10 starting to get a bit hectic, because that's where Bradley Hawley and his damage car is dropped. Has now met a fellow damage car in Pat Harvey. Also in this grouping, Charlie Sumner, along with Colton Lane, who's also been dropping back, and a bit of a push up the track. Nearly had contact. Here comes Sumner.
Yeah, Pat Harvey there got very, very tight underneath Hawley, and obviously it's killed all his exit speed, and now Sumner's to his inside, entering 3.
Tried a late arc at that time. Sumner able to get on by, though, and Harvey with that really crushed in right front. Drops back now a position to 12th.
You see the damage on Hawley and Harvey's car is pretty similar, and speaking from experience, when you crush that right front down, it's pretty much one of the worst feelings in the world if it then goes to a green flag run, because you know immediately when you do it and you see the hood pop up that you've killed a lot of the speed that your car had. So this is a very painful run right now for both these drivers.
By the way, there was a green flag pit stop already. Mike Knight just came out of the pit lane in the 68. He's back now in 24th position. Was running in the late teens throughout this run, so drivers are starting to come down. The question's going to be, when do the rest of these groupings come down? Here's the difficult part. It's not just as simple as come down, you can fix the damage. No, if you fix that damage, you're going to lose a ton of time. You have to stay with that damage until you get a caution flag, basically.
Yeah, it really is just damage control for these drivers with damage until there is a yellow, and they've just got to be hoping that they see one. And unfortunately, it always seems like it's that thing where you see yellows up until the point where your car's damaged, and then it goes green the rest of the way. So it's a pretty rough time out there right now for drivers such as Bradley Hawley. Obviously, he's not used to running back in the 10th spot, and you can see the effect that the damage has had. He's always a contender for the win, and right now he's 9.5 seconds off the lead.
Bit of a poke that time for Sumner, able to take away the bottom side. So just able now to get a bit of a run. This again for 10th position. Sumner, mind you, has left side damage on that 98. Hawley, though, has been able to really use that middle line, and I've seen this at some tracks where you can get a bit of a boost in speed, but again, the tire wear, as talked about, has been such a major factor if you try and use that every lap.
Yeah, it can be quite a powerful defensive line, but obviously, as you say, especially with drivers trying to do a pretty long run here, and the initial track state for this session was really quite low, 20%, so that increases the tire wear quite substantially running on clean areas of the racetrack. It can increase the speed though, so that is a little bit of optimism for those drivers that like to see some multi-groove racing.
That single filed out, by the way. Acosta's now within 0.4 of a second of Regan Jr. up towards the front. They have ditched James O'Brien. The gap between O'Brien and Acosta is nearly 2 seconds at the head of the field.
You see right there, he's obviously well within striking range of Richie Regan Jr. right now, and it's actually got to be quite a worrying moment for Regan Jr. at this point, because he's used to having quite a lot of strategy options when he does decide to pit, and right now this pair of cars, it's really a question as to who blinks first at this point, because that really is gonna determine who wins out of these two. They're very, very evenly matched in terms of pace. Obviously, they've dropped James O'Brien. He's out of the fight. Jay Felton's continuing to fall back. He's now 6 seconds off the lead. It really is, if it goes green, a straight fight between these two drivers.
Multiple pit stops. Bisot Jr., Sumner, Daniels all coming down this time. Colton Lane also ducked down the previous lap and overran his pit box. And the interesting thing picked up on the onboard, you may notice, take a listen for a second. He's shifting at Chicagoland.
Yeah, that's something that I don't think I've ever seen anyone do. I'm not 100% sure that that's actually accurate on our replay there, but if it is, that's definitely interesting.
Take a listen. Pit stop for Regan Jr. Car sounds normal in terms of that, but Regan Jr. has missed the commitment cone. The 46 ran to the right side of the commitment cone. That may be an unsafe pit entrance.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be an unsafe pit entrance. He was definitely the wrong side of the cone right there. A pretty nice Ken Block style entry though around it to drift it back on the pit lane, but that's at minimum a 15-second penalty. So it's really put all the pressure on him right there. Making that decision to pit early has cost him. Obviously slid the pit cone, and now the ball is firmly in Abner Acosta's court.
O'Brien followed him down this time. There's the counter move. And Regan Jr. still sitting in his pit box with that penalty. So this will potentially put Acosta in the net race lead, depending on how this all plays out as they stop right behind him.
Acosta actually slid his pit box a little bit, but I don't think it's going to hurt him too much. He's obviously managed to pit without penalty, so he's going to come out significantly in the lead.
Felton down this time by. That leaves Cervantes and Brett along with Blaine Adams on the track. And Acosta out first. O'Brien out second. O'Brien, despite the slide for the 05 in the pit box, was still 0.8 slower.
Yeah, you can see it does look like it's closed the gap a little bit. Definitely looks like O'Brien's closer than he would have been otherwise.
There goes Blaine Adams. Fellow family member. Brett Adams is still on the racetrack along with Cervantes. Currently those drivers, the only drivers not to pit.
We've seen this before with some drivers trying to stay out as long as possible in the hope that a yellow will come out and gain the track position by trapping the recently pitted cars a lap down.
Right now, there are only 4 drivers on the lead lap last time by, 2 in total. Acosta, ready to unlap himself, is just behind him. You'll see him just right there as Cervantes comes down to pit with that Chevrolet Camaro. The question's going to be, will Adams follow him this time by? No is the answer.
Adams got extremely tight off of turn 4 that time by. He's definitely suffering when it comes to tire wear at this point.
Approaching 35 laps to go this time by. Several drivers already back on the lead lap. With that penalty, by the way, Regan Jr. has fell to 22nd on the racetrack. 2 laps down, now 1 lap down.
Yeah, initially, I thought it would be a 15-second penalty, but I think we'll have to check the pit times. Just looking at how much he's lost, it surely must have been more than that.
You can see the time. 14 seconds on average of the pit box on scoring. That's a 40-second penalty in total when you do the math.
Yeah, that's extremely rough. Obviously, that's well over a full lap.
Currently, P6 is heating up. This is where drivers like Sumner and Lane have cycled around for the time being. And they've gained net positions with their pit stops, mind you.
Yeah, and both of these drivers we saw have really good pace. We just saw that, especially Colton Lane, looked like he was struggling to pass cars. So now having some green flag running and everybody spread out in front of him so he's got some clean track is looking like it's really helping him.
And I find that, at least in my personal opinion, that being able to get that rubber on the racetrack and have a green flag pit stop, it almost feels completely different to how you would be in, say, a restart situation to help you be able to calm down.
Yeah,
just my basic opinion.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I think sometimes when you come out after a pit stop under green, it can be actually a little bit tricky to decide how hard you want to push on those first couple of laps. Obviously, on a restart, it's pretty clear you're in amongst the mix, and you kind of have to judge your pace off the cars around you. Whereas if you come out alone, it can be kind of strange to drop back into that attitude of hey, I've got so much grip now, I can really push. Or as you say, it can be very helpful because you can really kind of mentally sort yourself out, figure out exactly where you are in strategy compared with other cars. You can plan and roughly calculate when you're going to catch people and at the kind of rate that you are going to catch them.
By the way, as you can see, Acosta now the overall race leader after pit stops for Brett Adams. Everyone is ducked down. Second place is also just handed back positions to O'Brien. That was with Bisot Jr. falling back to third position. They have different strategies. Bisot Jr. had the undercut by 3 laps.
Yeah, and obviously you see there that the undercut gives you some track position, but now it's given him no recourse against James O'Brien. Obviously O'Brien's much quicker, and that advantage is going to probably stay there for now the next 15 to 20 laps, at which point even if Bisot Jr. has done a better job at managing his tires, he's going to be too far back to do anything to get that position back.
The gap for the race lead is about 2.1 seconds. Bisot Jr. now 3 seconds back, but dropping. Zemke up to 4th position, also went for the undercut. Jay Felton, though, has been one of the storylines. We talked about him struggling in qualifying. Was involved in one of the early incidents with the tap into turn 3. He's now up inside the top 5, up plus 11.
Yeah, Jay Felton's a driver that we see is always extremely strong on long runs, and obviously this green flag race is really playing into his hands. Just the problem is that he's been too far back to really be a factor in this lead fight, and 6.9 seconds off the lead. He's going to need some outside help to put him in with a chance of this race win. But I think he's got the possibility of getting all the way up to maybe 3rd. Robert Bisot Jr. is only just over 3 seconds ahead of him right now, and obviously Felton with his long run pace might be able to run that down.
Bad news, by the way, if you like Jelly Rolls, specifically Jelly Rolls Racing, Colton Lane added additional damage to the number 60, has now dropped to 7th spot. Charles Sumner is now to 6th.
And Colton Lane, a driver who has, actually, big contact with the wall. I'm not sure who that was there on the exit of 2, but they really got into it.
Yeah, that was just in front of Zemke. That was Scotty Johnson, who is looking like that car has been at Bristol, Martinsville, and several drivers. That's the 07 we're referring to. Crushed in front nose, crackled right side, damage on the left side of the car, and damage on the right rear.
Yeah, he's had contact in all places. The left side's looking pretty clean at this point, but obviously that right side is really roughed up, and around an aero-dependent racetrack such as this, that's definitely going to hurt.
He's 23rd, by the way. Currently 1 minute and 8 seconds total back. 2 laps down now on the track. P4 also, that's where Felton now driving to the outside. Zemke able to take the apron this time, though, to shuffle back to the bottom.
See Felton trying that move on the top side, the 42 running right down at the bottom. Doesn't look like he can match Felton's speed on the top, and just gives up the position on exit.
And that's just the difference even on 3-lap tires. Already, though, Zemke dropping back 6 seconds. It's a massive gap for Felton to try and close up. For comparison, Lane, who was just in this grouping a little while ago, he's already dropped back to 10th position, all the way back to where Pat Harvey is at the other end of the trioval.
Yeah, Lane had a very strong opening stint of the race and looked like he was really moving himself to be a top 5 contender, but just as the race has gone on, it's kind of gone away from him, and now he's having a little bit of a slow slide through the field.
Indeed. Take a look at where Holly and Daniels are. Remember, Daniels elected to top off on fuel, not take tires, top off for 6 seconds in the pit box, and then drive off. Sacrifice track position, save, then started pushing at the end of the run. At this point, that decision not looking like the greatest call at this point again, in retrospect, because he lost net positions overall, even with the green flag pit stop factored in so far.
Yeah, and obviously right now he's trying to make his way past Bradley Holly. Holly's running it pretty tight. Looked like there was actually a little bit of contact with both these drivers through 1 and 2. Holly trying to recover with that right front damage, but it just looks like it's parachuting his car down the straightaway. So even if he's getting a good exit, he's just not able to carry enough speed to really challenge. And see Josh Daniels now clean track ahead of him. It was a strange decision. I'd really like to hear from him as to why he made that decision to come down for fuel only, because I think it lost him a lot of track position and definitely has hurt his race.
-4 from starting position. Remember, Daniels was a couple positions up the road at the time of the first caution flag in this race. 23 laps to go. As Acosta again is in the lead. The lead is shrinking a bit though. O'Brien's cut about half a second off of it the past 10 laps.
Yeah, and another driver who's continuing to eat into it is Jay Felton. He's now 6.1 seconds behind. He was 6.9 seconds behind, so obviously taking quite a significant chunk out of it. Don't think he's going to get there even if he maintains that pace. It just makes me wonder if Acosta's really kind of slowing the pace just to make sure that he's going to have tire at the end, and even if James O'Brien does get to him, that he's going to have something in his pocket to be able to defend.
Pat Harvey, he's got P8 in his corner pocket, able to take it away from Joshua Daniels. That brings Bradley Holly now into this fight on screen. And despite that damage, Holly's been not giving up. He's someone that will really fight you for positions, especially if it's for the race lead we've seen in several different battles throughout his career.
Yeah, Holly's one of those drivers that you know that if you're around him, you're always going to be assured of a great battle. He's going to run you clean, but he's definitely going to run you hard. So it's been challenging for these drivers to get past him, and even with this damage, he's definitely not giving up, and he's looking like he's going to be on to just maintain and finish inside the top 10. And I think honestly that's going to be a good recovery from hitting the wall so early on.
Bit of a bobble off the corner of that tide behind him. Colton Lane nearly smacked the wall again. So this is now a 4-car grouping within about a second or so amongst one another, by the way, on this track with Harvey, Daniels, Holly, and Lane. This is 14 seconds back. And already there's some trouble up front. Sumner tapping the wall a little bit. You've seen him drop to the apron.
Yeah, and Sumner was actually a driver, I was just about to say, who's having an extremely strong run tonight. He started 24th, and now he's running up in 7th spot.
Looked like he nearly did scrape the wall, but in fact didn't. However, he did have a bit of a loose moment. Listen, right here.
Yeah, you see there, he's definitely missed the apex, and he's getting so close to the wall and just able to pull it away from it. See some damage on his left front, which I believe was from the earlier incident that we had on the front stretch, but he's holding on well, all things considered.
And remember, with that grass down to the bottom of the racetrack, if you spin down there, there is a chance you do not get a caution flag. Keep that in mind. However, the apron is within that boundary, if need be. 18 laps to go now this time by. And when talking about the strategies, we've seen Brett Adams do the overcut, as it's called. 16 laps now on his stint, by the way, in the 23 machine. He's the fastest car on the racetrack in the 32 twos.
Yeah, and there's a driver with some damage as well, so obviously you can see the impact that tires has, that it really can offset you, and it looks like he's gonna be fighting it out for maybe the back end of the top 10 if he continues at the pace he is.
Look just up the road again, Daniels and Harvey, and this fight still continues. Daniel able to get by with that damage on Harvey. So right now, looking like a decent points day for Daniels, though, in the retrospect, and it's been a strong start to AthleteBooker.com eSports. And their time in this series, 3 top-tier drivers, Regan Jr., O'Brien, and Daniels on that roster. It can be difficult to try and win the team championship with that amount of talent we've seen in PRL Cup Series competition the past couple of months.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds like we've got a battle out there, the 25 versus the 3.
Cervantes able to get by Bisot Jr. last time by. Let's take a look at this again. It was a big difference in pace last time, half a second last time. Right when they came across that stripe, Cervantes is able to just drive on by him even with the damage.
Yeah, and it really looked like the position was just completely given up there by Bisot Jr. on corner entry. He obviously saw that Cervantes was coming with a ton of speed and just realized there's not a lot of point in fighting that at this stage of the race.
The difference of 6 lap pressure tires for the 25, by the way. And that pass was for the top 5. The leaders, by the way, running in the 32.3s now. Others running the 32.4s in 5s with 14 to go. Gap still being trimmed on down. O'Brien's trimmed it to nearly a second.
Yeah, the gaps do look like they're starting to stabilize out now at this point. Jay Felton has got the 6.3 behind and is now actually started to lap slower than the lead pair. I really think that Acosta's just been managing the pace, and you're going to see that when it gets to 10 to go, he's going to have enough in his pocket to actually pull out to the lead.
It's a question of what if, because remember, Regan Jr. was up there in that battle as well, leading a lot of laps before that penalty. But Acosta, mind you, was there and starting to close at the end of the long run. It's a question of what if and how those drivers would have fared in terms of battling for the end of this race.
Oh yeah, I think it would definitely have been a great fight to see. Obviously, Acosta was kind of pushing Regan Jr. to come down to pit lane first, and obviously we saw that Rich Regan Jr. did make the decision to pit before Acosta. I can't help but wonder if the pressure of having a driver that close to him made him really try and commit to the pit entry, and it just didn't come out right for him this time.
Traffic coming right behind him. Jose Medina on fresher tires in the 24. That last half a tenth or so for O'Brien, having to back off the gas. There's Medina on the bottom of the racetrack. Time bounces way back around to 11 to go, and Medina got loose just underneath the race leader.
So obviously O'Brien is closing that gap down, and I'm beginning to wonder maybe if he hasn't done a really amazing job of saving tires while still trimming that gap. But I can't help but think that Acosta's just been able to manage the pace, and he must have something in hand, surely.
2 tenths lost with that pass of the lap car last time by. 10 to go this time by. O'Brien looking to close up. Did he save enough of the tires throughout this run? Contact in front of them. 2 lap cars. Blaine Adams and Medina both made door-to-door contact. They saved it. We stay green as they move to the right side of the track for the leader.
And this is exactly what Acosta doesn't want to see. He doesn't want to be in amongst these lapped cars, and he definitely doesn't want to be in amongst them if they're having issues.
Medina, remember, has been flying on the different set of tires, 22nd.
Yeah, it's pretty big contact. Pretty surprising that the 33 didn't go around there.
The checkup from Acosta lost him another tenth, by the way, in that battle. O'Brien's now within drafting distance. By the way, an update from the pit lane. Kalen looking to get all the damage repaired to try and get back on the track for the finish. He's in 26th. His chance going to get up to 25th. So points on the line as O'Brien closes in. Now it's under half a second with 7 to go.
It's starting to look like Acosta's under threat. I've actually been watching him the past couple of laps, and it does look like his car's a little bit tight, especially on the exit of 4, so I thought he'd been saving tires. Maybe he's actually burnt them up a little bit this run. O'Brien's really rolling through the middle, and especially the exit of 3 and 4 just a little bit faster.
O'Brien's been quicker by 1/10 of a second and averaged the past 5, 10, and 20 laps. Back across the stripe once again. O'Brien closed down under 4/10. Now it becomes the difficult part. This is where the dirty air starts to factor here at Chicagoland.
And we can see that O'Brien is very strong on corner exit. And I think we'll see as he comes off of 4, he's going to close that gap even more. But it's one thing to catch the car. It's definitely another to pass him. I think still we're coming up to 6 to go at this point. It's still going to be a tall order. That's still a significant gap to close down.
3/10 of a second now. Lap traffic is ahead up the road. Will be a factor's the question. That's Wilson Jr. Brian able to get lower on corner exit off 2. Able to close in another 1/2 a tenth.
I think that lap car is going to both be helping and hurting Acosta. It's probably not what he wants to see in the middle of the corner, obviously with that push, but it's going to help tow him down the straightaway. Gets really close to the wall on the exit of 4 that time.
High 5 from Barney. 5 laps to go. From Chicagoland, O'Brien once again quickest out of the 2 by a full 1/10 of a second. Cuts to the bottom of the racetrack. Drifts up the track a touch. Acosta also pushes as they go down the back.
And just watching the difference in the line between the 2 cars, it's pretty clear to me that O'Brien's just able to run maybe a quarter to a third of a car width lower in both ends of the racetrack, and that's where all the speed's coming from. He's able to get a straighter exit off the corner, and it's just allowing him to pull up down the straightaways.
And he's still gaining more time. Gain another 6/100ths. Now he's there. 1/10 of a second. Lap traffic ahead. Wilson Jr. stays up high. One driver is bouncing around, and Doyle will rants up the road as well. They might be forced to take different lines. O'Brien to the bottom. Acosta in the middle line coming off turn 4. The 05 drifts up. O'Brien takes away the bottom, coming to the stripe with 3 to go.
Yeah, and I think that right there, Acosta having to run the middle has really cost him. O'Brien's got the preferred, he's got the bottom. It's going to be really difficult for Acosta to do anything in that middle line here.
Laurent's just up the road in the 9 car. O'Brien gives some space for Acosta drift. He's pinning him. 3 wide into turn 3. O'Brien with a harder charge. Gets clear on corner exit. 2 laps to go from Chicagoland. Acosta tries to fight back.
And I don't think he's got anything to do it. Obviously, he's going to have the draft down the straightaways, but I just don't see how he's going to match that mid-corner speed. You see O'Brien's just so much better through 1 and 2 right there in the middle.
White flag coming out this time by. Acosta led much of the second half of this race. O'Brien was able to reel him in from 2 seconds back over the course of 40-plus laps. White flag is out. 1 to go from Chicagoland for James O'Brien.
And that's a really impressive run by O'Brien right there, because I honestly thought with the advantage that Acosta had, and with how strong his long run pace was that first run, it was going to be so difficult to run him down. And O'Brien ran him down, passed him with 2 to go. I think this is a well-deserved victory.
To the final corner. Costa not able to close in. O'Brien pushes up. But it's 2 for 2 for AthleteBooker.com eSports. James O'Brien wins at Chicagoland. Acosta in second. Felton rounds out the top 3, with Zemke and Cervantes coming out with top 5s in a wild one. What a race and what a win indeed. And what a start for this organization.
Pick up 2 from 2 is obviously pretty good, especially when I want to say their lead driver obviously had a mishap today. Fortunately, Richard Regan Jr. came home 1 lap down in 19th after taking the pole and leading the first run of the race.
Seeing the congrats from Regan Jr., his friend, able to come away with the checkered flag for the organization. James O'Brien comes away with a win by 0.4 of a second. Post-race coverage come up in a few moments or so. You're watching the Global SimRacing Channel live from the virtual Chicagoland Speedway, Joliet, Illinois. Stick around. Tonight's edition of the PRL Cup Series is sponsored by FEGPC. FEGPC offering sim racing PCs for every budget. Whether you're just getting started or you're ready for that monster machine or anything in between, we've got your budget covered. With over 3,000 iRacers currently running FEGPCs, including some iRacing staff, you can get yours today by using the contact page over at fegpc.net. What a race, what a finish. In the end, traffic was a factor, and after being behind by about 2 seconds, James O'Brien came away with the race victory by just under 0.4 of a second. His team, AthleteBooker.com eSports, starts the campaign 2 for 2. Abner Acosta led much of the second half of the race after a speeding penalty and unsafe pit entrance for Richard Regan Jr. He comes away in second overall after leading all those laps. Felton came home in 6th after starting in the teens. Zemke started and finished in 4th, with Cervantes rounding out the top 5. Joshua Daniels got back to about where he was when he elected to come down and top off on fuel in the first caution of the race, and the only one. Pat Harvey, Charles Sumner, Robert Bisson Jr., and Bradley Hawley rounded out the top 10.
just missing out on the top 10. We had Colton Lane in 11th, one of those cars that picked up damage and was involved in some interesting battles throughout the night. They had Brad Adams, the driver who took tires on that first pit stop. It was a solid recovery for him to come home in 12th. Jeffrey Ford had a pretty quiet run, but successful one from 25th up to 13th. Adam Shane, a similar 17th to 14th climb. Mike Knight came home 15th, and then last car on the lead lap was Colin Carroll in 16th. Moving on to drivers one lap down, we had David Wilson Jr. in 17th, but a good game from 26th starting spot. Doyle Lawrence fell from 11th down to 18th. And then Richard Regan Jr., big casualty of the pit stops, obviously with that unsafe pit entry, started on the pole, came home in 19th, and Blaine Adams in 20th.
21st position went to Brandon Adams one lap down. Medina 22nd after taking the overcut strategy. Scotty Johnson, the only driver 2 laps down, in 23rd. Paul Johnson, 24th. Matthew Wilford in 25th. Mark Kalin did make it onto the racetrack for that one spot he wanted to get to 26th, with Yves Pelland rounding out the finishers. Chad Brown did not make it to the grid, but James O'Brien comes away with the victory. James, how does it feel to be a winner in this season?
It's been a long time coming, man. I've been struggling lately, and this means a lot because Richard and I put in a lot of time to practice this track this week and focus on long run speed, and it definitely paid off for us this time.
Talk us through what was going through your head as you had to close down about a 2-second gap after pit stops. What was going through your head? What was the game plan that got you this win?
Well, Richard kind of gave me this win. If he didn't mess up on pit road, it would probably have been for him. But came out of the pits behind Abner, and I didn't really think I was going to be able to run him down. And I just started pushing the car a little harder, and I noticed that it was holding on just fine, and the tires weren't really going away from me. So I just kept running the same line and tried to stay as consistent and hit my marks as much as I could. And the time kept trimming down and trimming down. Eventually I got to him, but the lap cars kind of made things a little more iffy. I saw a lot of contact ahead of us, and really wanted a clean finish with him and I with no interruptions, so I'm kind of glad we got that.
What was some of the difficulties you felt of tonight that you've seen on this racetrack? Because many talked about in practice that it was a very slick track with how hot it was at the start of the race.
The car transitioned, I think, 3 or 4 times during the run. It started off pretty much neutral. You could flat foot it for a couple laps, and then the nose would start to go away from you, and you'd have to prepare for that. And once that came back, it would neutralize again, but then it would err on the side of the rear end would step out on you if you kind of burnt your stuff up early in the run. So you definitely had to be aware of what your tires were like early in the run. I think on after that first caution, I slipped back a little bit because I was saving too much, and I needed to kind of step back up and move back up if I could. So there's that fine line of the management versus speed, and that was kind of try to have that perfected this week, and it looks like it paid off.
Colton Lane with a great point as well, one of your fellow competitors. You mentioned before the days of Bradley Hawley and Richard Regan Jr. and their dominance, you were the dominant driver winning week in and week out. How does it feel to kind of, in his words, bring some of the old guard back to get victories with tonight's win?
It feels great. Yeah, I won 2 full season championships with PRL a few years back before I met you and Richard and the whole crew there, and you guys. I don't want to be greedy and win every week because that just kind of takes the fun away from it, but I know the chance is there every week. I mean, everybody makes mistakes. Brad and Richard are extremely fast. I pride myself on making as few mistakes as I can, though that doesn't always happen. Like last week, my screen went black in the middle of the race at Sonoma. Luckily, I had a good runoff room. Any other turn on that track, I would have been finished. But yeah, it's kind of reminiscent. I've had a lot of good memories with a lot of these guys in this league, and that's why I continue to run with them as much as I can.
Now, 2 things to note. The next race is at Pocono. The next broadcasted race with the major series taking place next weekend is Indianapolis. Your thoughts on those 2 tracks?
I used to love Pocono with the old package. This new package, it's kind of hit or miss with me. I'm not fond of these like draft fest races. I'm kind of glad this one didn't end up that way. Uh, you said Michigan was after that?
Indianapolis.
Indianapolis. Yeah, same kind of story there too. I really like when there's more driver input into the cars. I don't like the flat foot and just turn thing. That's why I kind of like this car a lot because it changed so much and it was fun to drive and the setup was actually really good. It was enjoyable to drive. So we'll see, I guess. I really enjoy those two tracks as they are. Hopefully the car setups are matched well with them again.
Anyone you want to thank for being a part of this victory tonight?
Yeah, Athlete Booker for taking me on with Richard and Joshua Daniel. Richard for his pit mistake, because if it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't be the first one to talk to. Moto Million Autos, their motorcycle and automotive part website. You can buy pretty much anything you want. My dad, first Father's Day without him, and you guys for broadcasting the race.
Congratulations on the victory tonight. Very hard fought at the end of this race to close up that 2-second gap. That was James O'Brien with the victory tonight for AthleteBooker.com eSports. Abner Acosta led much of the second half of the race after that mistake from Regan Jr., but lost the lead coming to around 3 to 2 laps to go. He's standing by with Christian Chandler.
Abner, that looked like a really strong run. Obviously, really unfortunate to lose the lead with so few laps to go, but especially the first run where you were able to keep up with Richard Regan Jr. and really put him under pressure for that first pit stop. That looked like that really made your race, and obviously it looks like Sabin Tires and last week at Sonoma a strong run as well, and he's starting to look like a real competitor at the front of this league.
Yeah, it was a little disappointing that I lost it at the end, but I don't know. I felt really strong behind Regan at the beginning, and I guess I was just maybe following his line. Maybe he was helping me out, and once I got out ahead, um, I saw the guy behind me catching up, and I tried to fix my line and everything, but I guess being ahead wasn't as easy as being behind Regan. But yeah, overall a good finish.
Yeah, I mean, we really haven't seen many drivers able to match Richard Regan Jr. on the long run in this league. So, especially seeing you run him so close, and it really like you were running him down at the end of that first run. And obviously, the second run started off pretty strongly, and James O'Brien was able to obviously just about pull you back in for the end there. But again, it was obviously a very strong run overall, and it looks like it's going to be a good foundation to maybe mount a title challenge in this league. And obviously next week we head to Pocono, and you got any kind of thoughts about that racetrack and what you're sort of expecting there?
Well, I'm learning every race that I do ovals. I usually race road. I don't think I've done Pocono. I'm not sure, but I'm sure I'll practice it and try to get as good as I can and try to learn a little bit more with saving tires.
Well, when it comes to Pocono, it's a track where we see a lot of the guys who transition from road course racing into oval racing. They tend to run very strongly there. It's a little bit of a mix of 3 different tracks. So I suspect you'll find that you quite enjoy it, and you'll actually be pretty competitive again there next week.
I hope so. I mean, I thought the same thing for Sonoma, and these guys are just very fast in this car. I thought in Sonoma, I was like, well, I'm a road course driver, so this should be okay. And driving this car on that track was really tough. Like that half throttle the whole time, or you lose the car. It's really difficult. So we'll see. Definitely learning every day, and hoping to be up there.
Well, I would say that in terms of a first race to start out, I would say that Sonoma is probably actually the absolute hardest course that you'll ever drive in this car. So even with obviously the end of the race and slipping back a little bit, I still think it was a really strong performance, and obviously we're looking forward to see how you progress in this league. And before we let you go, is there anybody that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I would like to thank my team, Level Motorsports, and you guys for broadcasting and hosting, and PRL. and everybody else watching.
Thank you for coming and chatting with us, and once again, congratulations on the second place finish, and good luck next week at Pocono.
That was Abdul Acosta coming home in second tonight. Jay Felton was able to move up from 16th place at the starting grid up to P3. Jay, first things first, how are you feeling coming home with the top three tonight?
I don't feel that good about it, to be honest with you. My race was just a train wreck of mistakes and errors, and I don't know that I had a better car than third place, but it started with qualifying. I made a terrible mistake there, and then on lap 8, I think I ran into the back of Danny going into turn 3. Later on in that run, I just wore my tires completely off the car trying to move up through the field. And then after the pit stop, really didn't have anybody to race with. I was just out there running laps. So.
In your opinion, what made this race so difficult tonight? James O'Brien mentioned 4 different times the car went through different handling cycles. What was it like for you?
I thought the car drove decent. It didn't have any rotation off the corner for me. I mean, maybe the first 2 or 3 laps, but after that, the car it pushed. It was tight, and I just had to wait on the throttle and try to keep the wheel out of it on exit to, keep a right front tire on it and try to set the corner up. This, to me, the way this setup and this track was tonight, it didn't tolerate a poor entry. You really had to get your entry right so that you could get your exit.
Indeed. It was a talking point throughout tonight for sure. The next 2 races are going to be interesting. Pocono, not a broadcasted race, but then Indianapolis. Your thoughts on those 2 tracks for the next 2 races to try and build momentum towards the halfway point?
Well, with the talent that we've got in this league, I mean, it should be a good show. It should be very competitive. And like always, when you come to race in PRL, you better bring your A game because somebody's going to clean your clock if you don't.
Good way of putting that one. Is there anyone you want to thank for being a part of your top 3 tonight?
Well, I want to thank Charles Sumner and PRL. I want to thank GRS, Christian, Justin, Sean. You guys got the right stuff. And I want to thank VRT.
Congratulations on the 3rd place finish tonight, Jay. Very well deserved in the end.
Again, sorry, Danny. I didn't mean to run into you, but it's 100% my fault. And look forward to seeing you guys next week.
Once again, that was Jay Felton coming home in 3rd tonight. Christian Chowder standing by, though, was somebody who was in position to win this race, was leading until pit stops. Richard Reagan Jr., who came home 19th.
Richard, obviously not the result that you were hoping for, and I think you know what I'm going to ask here, and it's how did that pit entry come about? Obviously, you had Abner pretty close behind you, and I've got to say it was a pretty stylish pit entry. It was definitely, I think I called it Ken Blockworthy when you kind of got around that cone there, but fortunately, it looked like you got hit by a really, really severe penalty for doing that.
Yeah, it was going pretty good, and then I put that right rear into the apron, and I as soon as I did that, I downshifted and just wheel hopped, and I lost all control, and then I got a 40-second hold, so that sucks. The car was really fast. We that first run, I really pushed the tires, trying to keep it in the lead in front of Bradley, and my right front was 10% lower than what it was in practice, so my right front was killed. So I think the car had a lot more speed in it that we didn't get to show. I ended up running the front 2 down by like 2.5 seconds when we came out of pit road, and then stayed with them. So the car definitely had speed, and it just sucks that I make a mistake like that, and we come home with what, 19th. So really bad points day. This is what happened last season as well. So we got to try to dig ourselves back out again.
Yeah, it's one of those unfortunate deals where obviously when you want a yellow to come out to kind of help you and get that lap back, it unfortunately never does. And you were 2 laps down and got back to 1 lap down, so that's some consolation. As you say, obviously the pace was there. The first run showed that the pace was there. And next week we go to Pocono, and you kind of got any thoughts on that racetrack and what you expect to see there?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Pocono with this package. It's just race is very weird. So I'm gonna have to do a lot of practice, get up to speed there again. We'll see. I don't really like the drafting with these cars. It's just not my style. I think that should stay at Talladega and Daytona. but yeah, we'll see what happens. We're gonna look forward to Pocono, Michigan, and Indy, and those tracks, and can't wait to get back to those short tracks. So.
Well, I can definitely say that I agree with you there. I think as drivers, we all like to see that more old school kind of feel with the high power cars and the low downforce. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like we're going to be heading back that way in terms of these 1.5-mile races. So you kind of just got to make the best that you can out of it. But obviously, again, you were showing strong pace tonight. Unfortunately, it didn't come out. But still, you had the win last week. Still in a good position for the championship. And well, before we let you go, is there anybody that you'd like to thank?
Yeah, for sure. I'd have to thank James O'Brien for putting a lot of practice in with me today. Also, got to thank Joshua Daniels. Got to thank everyone at athletebooker.com. If you're trying to book an athlete for an event, corporate event, or anything, go to athletebooker.com. I got to thank you guys at GSRC, everyone over at Bobby Dale and Hart Legacy eSports. I got to thank Multiple Sclerosis Society and Susan G. Komen. Everyone that tunes in, everyone at PRL, all the sponsors for PRL, and tune in 2 weeks at Indy and see what happens.
Well, thank you for coming and chatting with us. Obviously not the result that you wanted, but good luck for next week.
That was Richard Regan Jr. coming home in 19th. There is the potential this may be the drop week for his championship hopes in 2020 Season 3. But Christian, first things first, your final thoughts after what was an exciting race, especially that green flag run to the end and seeing that chase down of the lead from 2 seconds back.
Well, I was definitely really surprised to see that happen. I thought that Abner had really good long run pace after that first run where he was able to stick with Richard as well as he did. And we were mentioning it a little bit afterwards when we were on break that if you looked at the pit stop time comparisons, it was noted at the time that it looked like Abner slid his pit box a little bit, and his total pit lane time was 40 seconds. James O'Brien's was 39 seconds, and Abner lost the race by 0.386. So if he hadn't slid the pit box, I think he would have probably won that, and that's got to be a little bit frustrating for him on that score. But it's definitely good to see another driver coming into the league who's capable of running at the front. Obviously, the past couple of seasons, we've seen emergence of some other drivers. Obviously, James O'Brien was saying that he'd been a force in the league some time ago, and obviously now back to the front. But then we've got other drivers. We had Jay Felton. He's obviously strong and able to put together a good long run performance. Now we've got Abner Acosta to fight it out as well, and obviously it's the league's looking really good. It's very difficult to pick who out of our top drivers is going to win each week, but we always get a good battle between them.
Real quickly, 2 interesting and unique tracks for the next couple weeks. Of course, as mentioned, Pocono, not a broadcaster race with a major series. Then Indianapolis. Your thoughts real quickly on those 2 tracks.
I think it was alluded to by Richard that the Pocono is a little bit of a strange racetrack with this package. Last year, I know in the Coca-Cola series, we saw that it was very, very difficult to pass cars, especially coming off of turn 3. You could have this almost insane run off the corner, and you'd think that you would clear them so easily down to turn 1. But if they were in the draft of another car, you would pull out, and because you had no help, you had to be very lucky that you'd had someone else trying to pass somebody further down the line, because otherwise your run would stall out and you'd end up falling back. And it meant that passing was very, very difficult. Obviously, we see a lot of strategy at the racetrack, and I think we'll really see that there. And Indianapolis, after that, is kind of a very similar the problem, so to speak, that Pocono has, where it's just so difficult to pass. We see the corners very, very flat, which means the aero is very, very important, and with the aero push, it makes it extremely difficult to build runs on people. And even though the straights at both those racetracks is so long, it just doesn't seem to work out in terms of passing, just because of the way that the corners are shaped and how much the aerodynamics are affected.
Absolutely agree with you on that. And there's a reason we talked about it is a difficult championship this season with so many different tracks. If you want to win the title, you have to race well at those very difficult, unique tracks. But we like to thank tonight's sponsors first off for being a part of this evening's coverage. First with FEGPC sponsoring this official round of competition. For more information, go over to fegpc.net to look at your next PC. Also like to thank the series title sponsors Diecast Kings, Road Trip Transport, and ButtKicker for all the hard work they do with helping this series and its success throughout the campaigns. We'd also like to thank Charles Sumner and the rest of the PRL for organizing this very strong and competitive series that has developed some of the up-and-coming talent we've seen all throughout iRacing the past few seasons. Also, thanks to the companies that provide the software and hardware for our broadcast listed up on your screen. But also thanks to Julie Wan, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a more hold of her great work. Thanks to the team today, and Christian and Sean. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. If you'd like to support the channel, you can check out our merchandise for sale at gsrc.storeandvy.com. Or you can check out our social media on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at globalsimracingchannel.com, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. Don't forget to head over to our YouTube page and hit that big red subscribe button, as well as the notification bell so you don't miss a moment here on the Global Sim Racing Channel. Lots of PRL racing coming up over the next few weeks, but the next time you'll see the Cup Series on GSRC is at the Brickyard. We'll kiss the bricks in Race 4 of the campaign. You'll find out on July the 5th. Start time 8:50 p.m. Eastern. That's around 5:50 Pacific. We also have upcoming races for other series listed up on your screen, so check those out and mark them down your calendar. But until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.